Hey everyone, do you ever get frustrated with all the accidentals that exist in all the seventh chords? Do you ever wish that you were faster at IDing all the notes that exist in all of the seventh chords? Well, my name is Josh Ring, and I'm going to help you do just that. Today we're going to talk about seventh chord mastery, the ability to quickly and easily identify all the notes in all of the seventh chords. We're going to talk about 3 ways that we can do that. And before you watch this video, I really encourage you to check out my other video, the Triad mastery video. This will really help you with understanding your major, minor, diminished, and augmented triads, which is just the building block for then extending that with now the seventh chord added. Before we dive in, please check out my free music theory survival guide. If you go to joshring.com/free, you'll get this free amazing guide that has a whole bunch of things related to music theory, including the seventh chord formulas that we're going to be talking about today. So let's dive in. All right, first we're going to talk about just what are the seventh chords. We're going to talk about 5 main types of seventh chords. So the first is the major seventh, and I like to think of it with this 1 3 5 7, and you often identify it with like a C MAJ 7, sometimes with a triangle or sometimes a capital M. Personally, I like the first 2 the most. Sometimes when I have just an M, depending on the font or the person's handwriting, it gets hard to identify what is it a lowercase m or an uppercase M. So I prefer the first 2. So with C major, right, we're just using the first, third, fifth, and seventh note in the key of C, right? So since C major has no sharps or flats, it would be C, E, G, B, like this. And then from there, right, if we want to go to like a D major 7, right? D major has only F sharps and C sharps. So here you can see nicely, right? The first, third, fifth, and seventh note in D major is the D, F sharp, A, and C sharp there. Moving on, the next seventh chord is the dominant seventh. So same kind of thing, but now we lower the seventh. So we call it a flat seventh, just means we lower that a half step, right? So most often we encounter like a C7 or a G7, right? We usually don't call it a dominant seventh in the name. And some people even do call it the major minor 7, meaning it's a major triad with a minor seventh. That gets a little verbose for me. So I just like to call it like a G7, and most people do that as well. So with our C7 example, we're going to take that what used to be a B natural, now we have a B flat with it to make it dominant seventh. And same thing with the D, right? It used to have F sharps and C sharps, but now we're lowering it. So it doesn't mean it automatically gets a flat on that note. It just means we're lowering it a half step. So it used to be the C sharp is now the C natural. So we have like the C7, right? A little more angsty to it. It wants to move more than the major seventh. All right, so then the minor seventh, we now lower the third as well, often with a little M7 or the minus sign 7. Sometimes you see it spelled out with a whole MIN7, but again, I prefer the first 2, quick and easy, especially if you have a lot of chord changes in a row. Gotta maximize your space. So here we have the C, E flat, G, B flat. So there's your minor 7, a little more stable than the dominant 7. And now for the D minor 7, again, just because there's a flat 3 and a flat 7 doesn't mean you're going to put a flat on that note. It just means you're lowering it. So again, it used to be F sharps and C sharps. So now we're lowering those by a half step. So now they're F natural and C natural. So we get this nice minor sound. Next, we have the half diminished 7. So we're basically taking that same minor 7 and we're lowering the fifth as well. So we have 1, flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. Often with a circle with a slash through it to notate it, so like a C half diminished 7, or some people like the C minor 7 with a flat 5, which personally I really love that. It often functions as a 2 chord anyway, like minor 7s often do. So it reinforces the function of the chord, and it really nicely is easy to find because you know your minor 7s, I think, a little easier. Once you get to these diminished chords we're going to talk about next, right? There's a lot of flats in there to keep track of. So the minor 7 with a flat 5 is a little easier to handle. So take that C minor, and now we're just gonna put a G flat on it now. So we have C, E flat, G flat, B flat. A little more angsty again. And again, that D, now we get to have the A flat in there. So because there's so many flats in these diminished chords, so this half diminished, sometimes I like to think of it as like a major 7 with a raised root, right? So for example, if I was gonna spell like a C half diminished 7, right? I could have, otherwise would be a C major 7, C, E, G, B, and then I'm going to raise the root now back up to that C sharp. So I have C sharp, E, G, and a B natural. And then same kind of thing for this D sharp half diminished 7. I would take the notes what used to be for a D major 7, raise the root up. Now I have the D sharp, F sharp, A, and C sharp, right? So this is a little trick to help with the diminished. And then for the fully diminished, sometimes just called the diminished, we have the 1, flat 3, flat 5, and the double flat 7, right? So the most angsty of all, very dissonant there, right? So usually with a little circle 7 or sometimes a DIM 7 fully spelled out. So here we have the C, E flat, G flat, B double flat, or for the D, D, F, A flat, C flat. The same kind of thing. I like to use this trick of taking a dominant 7th and raising up the root. So here what used to be that C7, C, E, G, B flat. Now I have this C sharp, E, G, B flat, right? So raising up that root. Same kind of thing for the D sharp diminished 7. So the reason I really like to do this for the fully diminished is it's a really common thing. Let me set up the key of C for us. All right, so here in the key of C, that 5, that G7 going to A minor, a very common progression. And sometimes we like to put a passing chord in between. So we might have this G to G sharp diminished 7 to A minor, right? So that G sharp diminished 7 functioning as like the 7 of 6 because it's heading towards 6 functioning as a 7 chord. Or some people like to call it like this passing diminished 7, so they call it a sharp 5 diminished 7. And so with this, the reason it's so helpful is because the notes for that G7 were G, B, D, and F. And we're going to raise up the roots by a half step to G sharp to get the fully diminished 7 before going to A minor. So only one note changes to get from the G to the G sharp diminished 7. So the G7 to the G sharp diminished 7. Very useful to think of it that way because this is probably one of the more common ways that we're going to encounter the fully diminished 7 chord. So there are other 7th chords out there we'll talk about at the end as a little bonus surprise, but we're going to stick to these 5 main types of 7th chords for now: the major, dominant, minor, half diminished, and fully diminished. All right, before we dive into the 3 methods that we're going to talk about for identifying the notes for your 7th chords, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me spread the word so I can help as many people as possible. So let's dive in. The first way is with this formula method. So with this, we're just going to take into account and see what are the similarities between the different formulas. So first, you'll notice that once the flat 7 is introduced, it stays there for a while. So once the dominant 7 takes on the flat 7, it stays there for the minor 7th and the half diminished 7. So that flat 7 sticks around. Once the flat 3 gets introduced, it sticks around till the end. And same thing with the flat 5. The last 2 have the flat 5. And then the fully diminished 7 has that double flat 7. So it's lowering twice. So for example, here with the E major 7, right? Again, thinking through the key of E major, right? We would have 4 sharps, so F, G, C, and D. So in this chord, we need the G sharp and the D sharp for the major 7. And then we're going to lower the D down for the 7. Then to the minor, we're going to lower the G down, the G natural. Then for the half diminished 7, we're going to lower the 5th down. Again, I like to think of it as the minor 7 with a flat 5. So we've lowered the 5th, the B flat. And then the last one, we've lowered the 7th again to the D flat to get the diminished 7th, right? So thinking through the formulas that way. Next, we would have like a triad plus a 7th, right? So just to recap from my triad mastery video, and again, if you haven't seen that, please go watch it. We have the major triads I like to group into 3 groups. So I have the same for F, C, and G, right? So all the accidentals are the same for those major triads. Then we have middle. So the middle note's going to be different for D, A, and E. And then the bottom note, B for bottom, B is all by himself, right? So the B is different than the D sharp, F sharp with the accidentals, just taking into account which ones are the accidentals. And this is the same if the bottom note is like a flat or a sharp. So for like B flat, then it'd be B flat, D, and F. So the B flat's still the different note. So we're going to take into account which ones are major triads here. So the major and the dominant have a major triad at the heart of it. The minor 7th, of course, would have a minor triad. And then the half diminished and the full diminished, of course, have a diminished triad as the basis for the chord. Then we have a 7th that we're going to add to it. So with the major 7th, that major 7th would then be a half step away from the roots of the chord. So meaning, here we have that A, C sharp, E, G sharp. That G sharp then is just a half step back to A, right? So if you have your A, it'd be a half step down to get to the G sharp. Seeing it on the piano here, right? We have that A going down a half step to get to the G sharp. Then the next 3, the dominant, minor 7th, and half diminished 7, the 7th is a whole step away. So that because they all have that flat 7th, right? So looking at, say, the minor 7th, right? We'd have that A minor, that minor triad at the heart of it. Then we have now the G is a whole step away from the A at the top, right? So seeing it again on the piano, that minor triad, then that G at the end, there is a note in between, right? So it's a whole step instead of a half step to get from the G to the A. And then the last one, the diminished seventh, right? We now have 3 half steps between the seventh back to the root. So seeing it on the piano, right? That A, C, E flat back to G flat. So G flat being 3 half steps to A. And a fun fact about the fully diminished, all of the notes are 3 half steps away, right? So A to C, there's 2 notes in between. So that's 3 half steps. Then the C up to E, there's another 3 half steps. The E to the G flat, another 3 half steps. And again, G flat to A being another 3 half steps, right? So another way to memorize major triads at the heart of it, a minor triad at the heart, or a diminished triad at the heart. And then is it the seventh a half step, whole step, or 3 half steps away? To see this in the major seventh, right? B to C, half step. Dominant seventh, B flat to C, whole step. Minor seventh, B flat to C, still a whole step. Half diminished 7 or minor 7 flat 5, again, the B flat still a whole step back to C. And then again, then the B double flat being 3 half steps back to C. Last method we'll have the perfect fifths versus our tritones, just visualizing where are their perfect fifths in the chords, where are their tritones. So what I mean by perfect fifth, we have this C to a G. This sound is what's known as a perfect fifth. We count up through the C major scale, right? Sticking within this scale, right? We would have our perfect fifth there. We can do this with any note. We just stay within the key, walk up to the 5th note in that key. That's our perfect fifth. As opposed to the tritone. So this C to G flat or even C to F sharp, there's your tritone, right? So counting up, now we have that flat 5 that we've been talking about. There's your tritone. So going through, right, this C to G, right, again, that's our perfect fifth. The same kind of thing, even if it's a C flat to G flat, there's still a perfect fifth, or even C sharp to G sharp, perfect fifth, right? The reason I'm bringing this up is that the perfect fifths usually will have the same accidentals. Right, so looking through, right, we have our scale at the bottom, C all the way to B. When we already talked about that C to G is a perfect fifth, and we keep going. All of these are perfect fifths. You can see all of them have the same accidental. The problem child is this B to F, right? The B to F sharp is what we need, that F sharp to make it a perfect fifth. So we have the B to F sharp is a perfect fifth, or the B flat to F natural is a perfect fifth. And because of this, any chord, any 7th chord that has a B and an F is going to be a problem child. So this, say G major 7, the B to F sharp is going to be a different accidentals between B and the F sharp. Same thing with, like, say, a B flat major 7. It's still a perfect fifth between the B flat and the F, but they are different accidentals. Every other perfect fifth we're going to encounter is going to be the same accidental. So let's look at the major 7th. We have 2 sets of perfect fifths, meaning that the 1st and the 5th will always be the same accidental, and the 3rd and the 7th will always be the same accidental. So looking at this F major 7, we have the F to the C is a perfect fifth, and the A to the E is a perfect fifth. So they have the same accidentals, right? Just like on this E flat major 7, the 1st and the 5th have the same accidentals. They both have flats, but the G and the D, another perfect fifth, will have the same accidentals as well. So they're both naturals. But the only time we have to watch out is maybe when we have like this G major 7 again, because there's a B and an F. So those are going to have different accidentals, even though they're still a perfect fifth. Looking at the dominant 7th, the perfect fifth is still between the 1st and the 5th. But now we have a tritone between the 3rd and the 7th. So say this F7, right? There's still that perfect fifth between the F and the C, still the same accidentals. But now you can see there are different accidentals, right? Between the A and the E flat. We have an E flat versus an A natural, so different accidentals. Say for the E flat 7, right? Still the perfect fifth, but now we have the tritone, so different accidentals between the 3rd and the 7th. Again, watch out for whether a B and an F. Now they're the same accidentals because it's the B to the F, right? So then the minor 7th, like 2 sets of perfect fifths again, but now we're lowering the 3rd and the 7th, right? So the F to the C is still a perfect fifth, but now we have the A flat and E flat, so they both have flats. So the 1st and the 5th, naturals, 3rd and 7th, both flats. Same kind of thing here with the E flat minor 7. 1st and 5th both have flats, 3rd and 7th both have flats. Again, watching out for where is the 3rd and the 7th in, say, the G minor 7, right? So then the half diminished 7, now there's this tritone between the 1st and the 5th. So those are going to have different accidentals, but the 3rd and the 7th are still perfect fifths. So those will have the same accidentals. Same kind of thing. We're getting a lot of flats now with this E flat minor 7, flat 5. And so again, the 1st and the 5th on the E flat will now have different accidentals, so that 1 flat versus the 2 flats on the B flat, but the G again and the D flat having the same accidentals. Again, problems do arise on the B flat to F interval. And last but not least, the fully diminished 7th, so just 2 sets of tritones, right? So the 1st and 5th are going to have different accidentals, and the 3rd and 7th are going to have different accidentals. Same thing with the E flat. Again, very accidental prone, lots of flats as we move along. All right, and again, watching out for the B flats to the F flats. So to recap, right, just watching out when the 1st and 5th are the same for the first 3 sevenths, and then the 3rd and the 7th are the same for the major 7th and for the minor 7th, but again, there's that tritone in the dominant 7th. And then the half diminished still keeps that 3rd and the 7th are the same, but now there's a tritone between the 1st and the 5th. And then again, the diminished 7th has 2 sets of tritones between the 1st and the 5th and between the 3rd and the 7th. The easiest way might just be to memorize that the 3rd to the 7th in the dominant 7th is a tritone. The tritone is in the half diminished between the 1st and the 5th, and the diminished has 2 sets of tritones, and everything else is a perfect 5th. That would make it much easier to identify, oh, the accidentals are going to be the same because they're the perfect 5th. So to see that here on our C major 7, same accidentals, again, C minor 7, still same accidentals, but we lowered the 3rd and the 7th. And same thing, half diminished, or again, minor 7 flat 5, so very similar to the minor 7th, but there's that G flat, so there is a tritone there. The C7 does have a tritone, right? There's the E to the B flat, the 3rd and the 7th are different. And then the fully diminished 7th, 2 sets of tritones. So to recap the 3 methods that we talked about, the formulas being aware of lowering the 7th and lowering the 3rd, then the 5th, then the 7th again. We have the triad plus a 7th method. So being aware, is it a major, minor, or diminished triad? And then is the 7th a half step, a whole step, or 3 half steps away? And then just being aware of where are the perfect 5ths versus where are the tritones. All right, and don't forget with your diminished chords, you can think of them instead of with all of these flats in them with the formulas, you can think of them as the half diminished being a major 7th with a raised root, or the diminished can be a dominant 7th with a raised root. I think these are very helpful to identify these 7th chords. And as a bonus to you, I have some Quizlet flashcards. These are going to be in the description below to the link. Go ahead, use those to your heart's delight to get faster with identifying these 7th chords, because it does take practice on top of these methods. All right, let's practice together. We're going to go through each of the 5 main types that we discussed and the various methods we could get to the answer. So first we have the B major 7. So with the formula method, we would think through, okay, what is the key of B? Okay, that has 5 sharps. And then our formula would be 1, 3, 5, 7. And so basically everything but B and E would get a sharp in the key of B major. So then we're adding then the D sharps, F sharps, and A sharps. So we get the B major 7. With a triad method, we'd think through, okay, the B major triad has B, D sharp, F sharp, B for bottom different, if you remember the triad formula groups that we talked about. And then the 7th would then be the A sharp because it's a half step away from the B at the top. And then we have our perfect 5th versus tritones. And so the major 7, no tritones, the perfect 5th between the 1st and the 5th, and then through the 3rd and the 7th. And because there's a B and an F interval, they will have different accidentals, but everything else would have the same accidental normally. Example 2, we have an A flat 7. So with the formula method, we think through, okay, key of A flat has 4 flats. So then with our formula, our normal A flat, C, E flat, G natural, but we would have then the flat 7. So we're going to lower that 7th to G flat. With a triad method, same kind of thing, but we think, okay, middle different with our major triad. So A flat, C, E flat, middle different accidental. And then we're going to add a whole step away from A flat would get us our G flat instead of the A flat, right? So a whole step down from A flat gets us to G flat. Last but not least, the perfect 5th and tritones. There's got to be a tritone between the 3rd and the 5th, so those are going to be different accidentals. The A flat to the E flat is going to be a perfect 5th, so we can keep those as the same accidental. Third example is the E flat minor 7. So with the formula method, we think through, okay, key of E flat has 3 flats. So then with our formula, normally it would be E flat, G, B flat, D. And then we would think through, okay, we're going to lower the 3rd and the 7th. So there's our E flat, G flat, B flat, D flat. Triad method, normally for a major triad, right? E flat, G, B flat, because it's in the middle different category. Then we think, oh, we're going to lower the third to make it minor. And we're going to add a seventh at a whole step away. So D flat to E flat being our whole step for there. And then our perfect fifths and tritones. And again, since it's minor seventh, no tritones exist. So the first and the fifth, perfect fifth, third and seventh, perfect fifth. So those all have the same accidental. Fourth example, G sharp minor 7 flat 5, or the G sharp half diminished 7. So with our formula method, normally we have a flat third, flat fifth, and flat seventh with this, but then the problem comes, key of G sharp major doesn't exist because there would be a double sharp naturally on the F sharp. Right, so luckily we don't have a G sharp major, but that does run into a problem. What do we do? So this is a perfect example to use the sharp 1, 3, 5, 7. So like a major seventh, perfect major. So like a G major 7 to start, right? Because we want to be raised up to the G sharp. So then we're going to raise the G to a G sharp. So now we have a G sharp minor 7 flat 5. The triad method, we start with a G sharp diminished, so G sharp B D, and then again that whole step from F sharp to G sharp would add our seventh with an F sharp. Or the perfect fifths versus tritone method, right? So here the G sharp to B would be a tritone. So those are going to have different accidentals. And normally the third and the seventh would be the same accidentals for that perfect fifth, but because it's a B to F, they're going to have different accidentals for that. Fifth example, the F sharp fully diminished 7. So with this, the formula method again, having flat 3, flat 5, and double flat 7 can get a little cumbersome, even though there at least is an F sharp major key this time with 6 sharps. So everything but B is a sharp. But this is, again, I really like this sharp 1, 3, 5, flat 7. So we have now the dominant seventh that would normally be an F7. We're going to raise up to make it an F sharp, fully diminished 7. The triad method, we have now F sharp diminished, so F sharp AC. And then we're going to add the A flat as being 3 half steps away from the F sharp. And the tritones, since it's a diminished 7, there'll be 2 sets of tritones. So the F sharp to the C, 1, 5 is a tritone, and the A to E flat, 3 to 7 is another tritone. And as a bonus, we do have the other 7th chords that exist besides the 5 main ones that we've been talking about. So just kind of walking through them. So we have the suspended one. So here, instead of the third, we're going to have the fourth. So 1, 4, 5, and the flat 7 is the most common. So this would be like a C7 sus 4, C7 sus 4. The next is the minor major 7. So we have a minor triad plus a major 7th, right? So the C minor major 7. And there's a dozen different ways you could notate this. Sometimes it's the minus sign and a triangle 7. Sometimes you spell out the MAJ 7. Lots of different ways to notate that one. We have the dominant 7th with sharp 5. So the dominant 7th that's with an augmented triad, finally, we get to use the augmented triad. And similar to this is the dominant 7th with a flat 5, right? So this would be a C7 flat 5. So C, E, G flat, B flat, right? Pretty similar to the half diminished 7, but it has a major third instead of that minor third. So a normal third instead of a minor third. And last one to just bring up, we can have like a major 7 with a sharp 5, right? A pretty bright chord with that augmented triad again, but now a major 7th, right? Those are a few that do exist. Theoretically, you get to just about any type of 7th chord you want with any combination of triad and some type of 7th added to it. Lots of opportunities to explore color. All right, I hope that was helpful for you. Again, I hope you're now able to quickly and easily identify the notes in your 7th chords. Keep working at it. You'll get faster and faster the more time you devote to this. Please let me know in the comments below which was your favorite or which was the most useful of the 3 methods we talked about, which was the most inspiring to you. Again, please check out my free music theory survival guide at joshring.com/free. Thanks and have a great day.